Hello students, I am doing a video here for Try, Catch, and Finally to demonstrate how it works. I'm doing a simple example here, but I'm pretty sure that you could use this to do the task 3 assignment fairly easily once you see how this works. I'm going to pull up the form that I'm using here just so you can see it. I have a single text box named txt validate. It doesn't have to be named that. It could be named txt first name, it could be named txt last name, it could be named txt age. It really doesn't matter. I have a validate button. I'm using it to validate just this spot, but it could be used to validate 3 text boxes, so it's not that big of a deal. When the button is clicked, in this particular one, I have set aside a string simply called strvar and set it equal to the 2 quotes, or I could set it equal to null, either way. strvar equals txt validate, again, could be first name, last name, it doesn't matter, dot text. In this case, this is what I called it, so I move whatever it is in the text box to strvar so that I can then more easily check it. Now I have a try here, and in the try I say if not strvar.all character is letter. And so what I'm doing here is just doing the same check basically that I did in task 2, but then what I do if it's not all letters, I throw new system argument exception. So let's just throw a new system argument expression, which basically says we checked our arguments that we took off of the form, and for whatever reason we don't like them. Okay, and in parentheses we're going to give the error message that we will be passing along to the user along with the exception information. Text is all letters, then we simply show the message validates. You don't have to do that. And if you were doing it for multiple fields, you'd want to say here first name validates, last name validates, age validates. Okay, so we have a try, and if it is not good for some reason, then we throw a new system argument exception with this passed as parameters. We catch that as system argument exception. EX is going to bring in the information for the exception, including this text. EX is more complicated than just this text, so you have to convert EX to string so that it can be displayed out in a message box. So after I do this, I'm presuming that the number is on the end. If it isn't, then there's a little bit of a glitch there. I'd have to write a more elaborate preventative type of program. strvar equals strvar trim end, and it finds the end of it and says lose that one character on the end, presumably a number, and then finally says, okay, if we've done anything, then we need to reset the value in the text box text field, and so we move strvar back. Now, if nothing went wrong, essentially we're just sticking strvar back into the text box and nothing has really changed. If something did go wrong and there was a digit at the end of the text, then this removes it and it sticks this back, having removed the last digit on the end of it. So let's look at how this runs. Okay, so I type in some text, and if it's just text, just letters, when I click validate, it says validates. If I were to add a digit onto the end of this, and I clicked validate, it's going to cause an exception, and the exception says system argument exception, only letters are allowed. That's what I had typed in for my error message. And then it says at TryCatchFinally.form.button validate click. Okay, so that's where we had done the validate button. And then it tells us where in the code it exists. This says line 29. Okay, and you'll see that the 4 was removed here from the end. And so if we hit validate again, it says validates. And that's the end of that, basically. And if you look in here on line 29, you can see this is where the exception was set up. Okay, and I'm going to just add an exclamation mark there. But this is really all you need to do. The try portion tests for a particular problem. Here in the if portion, if there is a problem that it finds, then you throw the exception. Now I could have reversed this, just said if this is true, then message box validates, else throw the exception. But in this particular case, I'm just testing for the problem first, and I throw the exception. And you can use the same exception for if you want to check for digits. You can change this to isDigit and do that particular check. If you are doing multiple things, like say for instance in age you're checking for length as well as that, then you'll probably also want to have either multiple try statements or set up for multiple catches, and then there's some issues there. Or you can simply, while you're doing this, you can also check for 2 things at once. That is, you can set this up, check for it, and if this is true, you can set a Boolean variable into that, and then you can do another if statement, set a Boolean variable to that, then say do if Boolean variable and Boolean variable, and as a result of that, throw the exception at that point. Let's say that you have an array and you have allocated 100 spots, but the user keeps entering data, and then you reach the 101th piece of data. This try catch type of thing will catch out of range errors, and with an out of range error you can stop the user from trying to put in any more data. Illegal operation prevents a variety of different things, which are, some of them they're easy to understand, others of them are not. Illegal operation is typically, from a systems programmer point of view, is when you try to feed instructions to the computer's processor that are not actual instructions. Used to be that was one way to crash a computer for malware people. They would feed illegal operations to the processor, it would crash, and sometimes when it was booting back up they could install malware into the system, especially in Windows. It was in the past very, very vulnerable to those type of things, and rootkits would get installed and other software and so forth. Now when you boot up, you largely have a system where even the administrator doesn't get rights until you get to the login screen and can log in as an administrator. So that's pretty much it for that. Okay, so I'm showing you this, and this is fairly simple, and I'm sure that you can grab 3 things from a form, 3 boxes, and then as a result of 3 boxes have 3 try catches to do the job for each one, one for each box. You can do them all in one button click, or you can do them as individual button clicks. That's totally up to you. I don't care whether the age goes through the try catch, can't speak, or if you want to do the age separately, that's fine. I don't really care. I just want you to use try catch so that you have a an idea of how it works, and I want you to do it this way simply because you get a feel for the fact that you can throw an exception manually. If you're doing something and an exception gets thrown automatically, because some do, like say for instance, if you try to do a conversion, say for instance, and you try to say string var dot to convert to a byte, for instance, and the value that's in the text box doesn't fit into a byte, then it will automatically trigger the exception and it will automatically jump to the catch. Okay, so when it jumps to the catch, it will do the instructions that are in the catch section, and then it will drop through to finally, and if there's anything that needs to be done in a finally, then it will. If there is no finally, then it simply drops out. It's not a big deal. It assumes that everything's been handled. When you have an exception, whatever needs to be done to fix the exception needs to be specified in that section. And you're not required to display the whole error message, just so you know, but that's not a bad idea, at least from a programmer point of view. Have a good evening.